Yo. All right. Hey guys. So this is an AI generated presentation that I've made by talking to Claude and then using Gamma, and I am unashamed. Anyways, let's get into it. I think there's some things I want to convey that I think are not totally understood, which is why we're going hard on gaming. So there's the TO school of pushback to going hard on gaming, and I think I've heard this from Eric Hayes as well. And let me summarize it, which is we it's more of a gut sort of aversion to things that seem like a snotty little kid. Is I think Jackson does a good impression of like you graduate from being a kid, so to speak. You enter adulthood. You learn this very serious skill of software engineering that is highly paid, masculine coded, and you are excited to apply that skill in the serious discipline of your profession and make everyone proud who raised you. And that's what led me to start a legal technology company. In fact, I was also interested in pest robotics and in all kinds of other serious things that sounded like adults would do them. I also experimented with call center technology, translating different voice accents on a phoning basis. It was all technically interesting, but I, I don't know. It's not what I was meant to do. And for me, the last couple of years, I'm going to take a drink of my coffee. The last couple of years for me have been about re-kidifying myself and realizing that what makes me most excited, what I'm most destined to contribute to, is all or related to games. And this may rhyme with, if you've watched the new DeepMind documentary, what Demis Hassabis is doing. He's working on all this science, and at the end of it, he's like, and eventually I'm going to get back to games. Elon said if he wasn't working on what he's working on, he would probably be making games. So that tells you something, right? Those are not just two isolated examples that happen to, via random chance, be who they are. It's indicative of this wider, I think, undercurrent that is not fully realized by software builders and venture capitalists right now, which is just how many, what a large percentage of the early adopters of software are interested in what we're building, or what we're going to build, what we've already built. So why we're going hard on gaming. It's not just about vibes and looking cool, it's a strategic choice. And in this presentation, I'm also going to present a little bit of a strategy shift or mind opening that I've had recently over the past few days of noodling on things. And that's this. Video games have spent decades figuring out how to make humans fast, focused, and effective. And we're taking those design principles. We have been doing this, or I've been doing this. You probably haven't been doing this, but it's implied in the way that I think about our product and the decisions that I make about what everyone should work on and how the UI should work. But we're all going to do this more directly. I'm going to encourage that sort of diffusion of gaming ideas and culture into macro. I think a lot of it is very healthy and useful. And we're applying those to work tools. So we are building a 10,000x productivity tool. Video games are the most sophisticated interfaces ever built. They've been ruthlessly optimized, dopamine hits speed, and all of this R&D has gone into basically making people feel like they are being super fast. And this stuff is amazing. It's not you of course, like my mom always saw it as childish when I was growing up, maybe, but like, holy shit, some of these people are extremely impressive. Chess is sort of venerable and has this sort of aura of intellectualism, but there's no reason that these games aren't that too. And they combine this like high actions per minute, APM, like actually physically taxing work. I don't know. I just the whole connotation of this in the culture, I think, is shifting and will shift over the next 20 years as the people that are currently our age and maybe up to 10, even 15 years older now, become older. And once the grandparent generation is also people who grew up playing games, I think it'll start to get looked at like chess eventually. Chess is only looked at like chess, I think, because it is, has been passed down through the generations. But eventually that will be true about video games too. Anyhow, That's just addressing, I think, some of the negative connotation about games in the culture. Um, but productivity software has not learned any of this. It's still built like 2005. It's just, it's built for the lowest common denominator, which I'll get to here. Before I get to the status quo, here's what I think the future looks like. The future looks like StarCraft. I know everyone is going to hate this because if you derive your sense of self-worth from learning a tool really well, this is the funny thing I think about a lot of engineers right now. Sense of self-worth derives from being really good at, say, something very serious and manly like Rust programming. And then at the same time, there's a desire amongst most engineers, if you ask them where they want to be in 10 or 15 years, before AI or now, because they're not really pricing in AI, you will say, I want to maybe be a manager, or in my best case, maybe I'd like to be a CTO or something. Okay. It's just such a funny thing to say from my vantage point, because what that actually means is, I want to be important, I want to be high status, but it also means I want to manage a whole bunch of people and deal with a lot of emotions and people development, which I can promise you, you don't want to do. You definitely do not want to do that. You want to build things. And all of a sudden, this opportunity comes around where you get infinite free leverage with AI, where maybe being that CTO or being the leader of an AI army is not the high status thing. And maybe that's the whole reason to maybe not like it, because everything really is based off of status. But at least in practice, it is achieving the leverage that you would get by managing an army of people in the form of managing an army of agents. And I promise you this will be, or could be, a lot more fun than managing an army of people, some of whom may hate you, some of whom might sue you, some of whom really like you. But, and you will grow to like them too. But, it's a lot of overhead. And if your mission is to build things in life, a lot of managers like Andre Karpathy end up going back to saying, fuck it, I'm just going to build things again, because it really isn't building. It's a totally different thing. And so that's maybe another reason to be scared of it, is like, fuck, that's a totally different thing. And you're realizing that now, but you're realizing it, recognize the privilege of realizing that earlier rather than later. Earlier, as you start to use these agents and realize it takes some of the fun out of coding, rather than later when you're a manager and realize, fuck, this whole path of mine led to this. Anyways, and I think one of the reasons it's not fun managing the AIs is that this interface is kind of meh. It doesn't feel like an RTS game, but it could. And it could, especially as these agents get better. I mean, you're not going to manage a bunch of slop agents in an interesting way, but you could manage a lot of very smart agents if they actually work in a way like StarCraft. And, they're starting to actually work really well on longer and longer time horizon tasks. So I think we in order to get the most, just speaking of macro for a second, to get the most out of this and to capitalize on this movement, we need a bit of a cultural shift towards being very excited about this, to changing our sense of self-worth from the output rather than the input. All right. So, okay, does this look like StarCraft? What? Like mouse and little agents on the, on a 2D canvas or isometric plane? Maybe. Yeah, I think it actually does eventually, but for now, we need an intelligence slider, and I don't think we're quite ready for that. So what we built so far, I think, is the right interface, this list, filterable list. And I think you'll still want that even when you do have like sort of a canvas. You might want to toggle back and forth between different modes. And I do think you want what Andre Karpathy calls this intelligence slider, where, you want this high APM interface we're building. I say Notion isn't building that, Slack isn't building that, nobody's building it. This is also very important, I think, because Cursor built Cursor tab before building the agent. Because and still people want to write actual code. That's why things like Cursor did better than things like Replit, and they were trying to whole shebang modify and change the whole interface. Is like, yeah, oftentimes you actually do want to just write the thing and go right into the details. Like I made this slide deck with AI. I didn't really have to modify that much, but if it just spit it out as a PDF, that wouldn't have been good. Like they actually do have a really great interface where you can edit things and iterate, which I did before presenting this. All right. So our unfair advantage, and please understand that we represent the risk in the economy. What I am presenting is not guaranteed to work, but nothing worth doing is. And also, there's no safe anymore. Like, it's not just like, oh, wow, we instantly increase the risk dial by pursuing this strategy. And that was dumb because we could just turn down the risk dial and pursue the bland strategy. No. I think the bland strategy is more risky, actually, than this strategy, because this strategy, I think in the bear case, leads to an interesting psychographic niche that maybe isn't as large as I think, whereas the other one just leads to apathy, and apathy is the death of startups. It's not lack of product market fit. Well, it is, but it's it's nobody cares. It's that you don't get enough time to get to product market fit, or you can't hire the people to get to product market fit, or you yourself burn up because nobody cares. Anyways, our unfair advantage. Notion. Notion has enterprise customers, Fortune 500 customers. You know, their brand is like this Japanese little cutesy weeboo thing. They're not going to build the hardcore cyber Afghanistan, to sell this to the DoD workspace. Their thing looks like it's for whatever. I won't say more on that. Slack is owned by Salesforce now. It is corpo. They are building for normies, and they are never going to do what I am suggesting we do. Linear is the closest, admittedly, but they are sort of this, I call it grifter Apple brand, where like you kind of, that's unfair. They built a really great brand in its own right, and they got copied by a lot of people, but it's an Apple adjacent brand. It's sort of like a vassal state of Apple's hegemony. 1 second, I'm going to turn off my phone alarm. All right, so that's linear, and I don't think they're gonna, now they're going up market, right? So they are doing that kind of stuff rather than going down market and building the super interface, the super suit. So none of these companies are gonna compete directly with us, and as well, not just sort of brand perspective, none of these companies own the full stack, right? Notion has the highest ambitions probably of all of these. Notion is definitely going to build chat at some point, but they're architecting these as separate apps because they don't want to sort of kill the golden goose. They don't want to merge it all into this mega workspace because they got a lot of people that just use it for notes, and they're going up market, so like they can't just shove everything into one thing because then it starts to look a lot like Microsoft, and then it's competitive, and then enterprise buyers don't want it. It's a whole thing that I went through when we were selling to legal teams. Okay, Slack. They only own the chat layer. They did add this task thing, but they shipped it in a bad way, and that's worse than not shipping it at all. So now can they not only add tasks, but they have a legacy task system that doesn't work, so they would have to choose to try to make that task system work, which is harder than just building a de novo task system, but they wouldn't want to do the second thing because they already have the existing task system, so they're not in a good place when it comes to shipping tasks or docs and so on. So like Slack is kind of the de facto HQ, but I think they're not well positioned to really own the whole stack that we're positioned to own. They've made certain user interface choices that are at this point in their company life cycle are too hard to undo. And then Linear seems to be very focused on building an incredible task manager. I do wish they would be more ambitious. For example, I think they could build an incredible AI agent product, but I don't know. They have their own philosophy that works for them. Okay. When I put on the homepage a workspace that looks like a video game with a new play tutorial button that I have coming, people are like, wait, what? Isn't that going to turn off people? Yes, it is. It is going to turn off all the people that we don't want to sign up. We need to make something that people really love. The death of startups is apathy. The death of startups is apathy. And we need to make sure that people are not apathetic. They need to feel some emotion towards macro. And I don't think that emotion should be should be hatred. Cluely has tried hatred. What's the pendant thing? Friend.com tried also hatred. So hatred's not good. That's not a good emotion. But I'm not suggesting hatred. Like people, it's just going to be for a specific group of people in the same way that not everyone's going to play RimWorld, So it'll be more polarizing. It'll speak very deeply. We cannot compete on features with ChatGPT. We can compete on building this most incredible interface that has very strong resonance with a group of people. Discord won because it was actually a very good product and had better voice chat than Slack, and Slack was kind of laggy. So that was great. They had that sort of impetus and a poor competitive set. A poor competitive set is quite important. But also, they won because they were very psychographically targeted. It was for gamers. Skype was like this weird kind of enterprise, kind of consumer thing owned by Microsoft or something. And Discord was like, just owned it by owning that demographic. All right. My insight, if you can call it an insight, although I don't know if it's an insight yet or if it has to be proven true to be labeled an insight, but what I think is my insight is that every engineer and founder I talk to is a former gamer. I really think that this is underpriced or underestimated in the market. So take Y Combinator. Y Combinator out of, let's call it 100%, it is, let's say, 90% men. Of the 90% men, let's say out of that, maybe so 75% total, maybe 80% total, let's go 75% total are gamers. Obviously the jocks maybe were, don't identify that way. They played 2K or FIFA or whatever, but they weren't gamers. But for the most part, if you're an engineer, you're a gamer. So League, StarCraft, COD, I can instantly build a bridge with anyone that we're interviewing generally, or talking to on the street or I meet at a party. If they're like a dude around my age, like chances are we can vibe on something that we played in the past. I really don't think people use this as much because when I bring it up in conversation, it really resonates with people and creates this immediate bridge and friendship. And I think it's surprising to people. It's not like, oh, another guy asking me what games I played. I really don't think people realize, because it sort of has this negative connotation in the culture, or childish connotation, that you can connect with so many people just based off of games. And it's like an instant thing that you can use. It's kind of a hack. And the gap. Nobody's making tools for these people. We're all making corpo slop that is built for the lowest common denominator that has to work for people that are, 50 years old that can't remember Command C and Command V shortcuts and need to use their mouse for everything. And the opportunity, and of course some of these apps do have shortcuts. Slack has good shortcuts, but the point is it's not built in this way. It doesn't encourage the user to do this. Gmail has great shortcuts, but Superhuman basically took that and ran with it and said, let's, really encourage and build the interface on this. And Superhuman didn't even go all the way. They also did a vassal state Apple design thing. We can go even further, and not only from an aesthetics point of view, but how that reinforces in a circular way the product, which then changes the aesthetics, which changes the product. All these things are symbiotic. They all work together. You can't separate them. It's the mindset of building for the psychographic niche. So the opportunity. And by the way, I just think this niche has the potential to be a 10,000x more productive. You're not going to take a 50-year-old salesperson and make them 10,000x more productive. It's just not possible, no matter what tools you give them, I think. Or at least you're not going to give them an edge. They're a late adopter. They may figure out how to use chat after everyone else has figured it out. But they're not figuring it out early. There's no alpha there for them. We want to build something with alpha. We want to build something that's underrated. The opportunity. Millions of people want to work. And games are fun. You're like, oh shit, he's gaming at work. What? Yeah, why is he gaming at work? Because gaming is more fun than his work. If you could make work feel like 50% like it feels like to play a game, that would be awesome. Why do games feel good? Games feel good because sometimes it's about escapism, but I think that's overrated. I think a lot of it is just it feels good. It feels good to play these games, right? The best games are just pow, WASD, quick scope, no scope. It just feels fucking sick. And I think that feels fucking sick is more important than the fact that you're holding an intervention or whatever gun you're playing with. Because I've had that feeling when I'm playing Brawlhalla. I've had that feeling when I'm playing pinball. It's just that feeling of flow state that you get into that I think a lot of our tools break and that we can give to our users. All right, this is a small thing, but we need to own the entire interface. So we can't just own one segment of it. That's why we built chat, we built docs, we built these all in a cohesive way, right? So when you share a doc or a task with a person, it comes up as a message in your channel with that person. So there is no sharing system that is sort of parallel but isolated from the chat system. And what that means is when you send a link, with Google Docs, right? I would share a link with Tio, and then I would Slack ping him because I don't know if he's going to get the email or where that email is going to go. So I would just ping him that I just shared a doc, and I'd also share the fucking link in the doc. Or maybe I'd share the link in Slack, and then I'd forget to share it, and then he'd be like, you have to share this with me, right? So this skips all of that stuff. It makes it into this cohesive place. And then there's this bidirectional relationship between where things have been shared and which channels and what those things are. So it forms this directed graph, right, where you have everything in one place. Anyways, that's not the browser. That's what we've already built. But we also need to own the whole experience. Macro is becoming an operating system. If you are like the limiting factor in your day will very quickly, as we accelerate other things, become the largest thing, whether that's two-factor fucking authentication or just opening tabs or window management. We need to build the supersuit. We need to build the Jarvis interface. We can't have users coming to us, but then they got to go into their web browser to go to Figma. Figma needs to live within our app as a little browser window. We need to eventually scope creep towards full browser. Like, it's not, oh, look, we're Perplexity Comet, go download our app and use it as your default browser. It's not ChatGPT Atlas, It's just, this is the app in the same way that Slack has an app, in the same way that Notion has an app. And when you click a link, it opens internally in a split instead of in your default browser. Maybe you can change that, probably. But, over time, it's just like, oh, okay, yeah, like I'm just, when I click a link, it opens in the browser. I still have my normal browser, but then I'm using this thing all the time. So might as well just connect my password manager and start using this in my browser. And I really like the window management. And also we're going to do really cool stuff with Chromium caching and prefetching and skins. And it is going to be really sick. We are going to level up the whole internet like LinkedIn. It takes me fucking 5 seconds to load LinkedIn, right? It's going to be really fast. It's going to cache all your correct tabs. You're not going to have to worry about the concept of tabs. Just whenever you want to get somewhere, it's going to be instant and feel native, just like opening a doc in Macro. So we are building the whole interface, the whole AI. It is all going to work together seamlessly. All right. This should say everyone needs a browser docs file. So like this is a universal, let's call it like white collar, but even blue collar like need, whether you're, in the trades and going out to places, you need docs, you need files, you need tasks, there's this kind of stuff. It is going to be open, at least source available, maybe open source, very strong psychographic appeal. Cool. Bet we're making. So yes, doesn't this limit our market? I don't know. That's the bet, right? The bet is that there are way more people in this niche than some may think. And we are definitely going to avoid apathy. I think we agree on that. And that there's enough people in this market. So just a note, because I haven't said so explicitly, let me just take some coffee. All right. So I've gone back and forth on who we're building for, whether we're building for startups or whether we're building for sort of prosumer individual use. And the answer, I think, is we are building prosumer use, like individuals at companies can start using it, just like Slack. It's called PLG, product-led growth. But we are definitely going to have an eye towards a success metric of how many startups are using Macro. The thing is, though, like with linear, let's just take I call it company A is like very leaning into the gamer brand, leaning into the feeling of power, building things like, the browser scope creep. And then company B is building things like team features, building things like GitHub integration, focusing on messaging like your startup needs an operating system. And I just think we can't do B before doing A. I just think it gets confused in the noise of all these different things like Monday.com and ClickUp and whatever. And it is not as exciting as building the 10,000x supersuit for an individual. And keep in mind, a company is composed of individuals. So the amount of excitement that a company is going to have towards Macro is, let's call it the sum of each individual's excitement. And getting each individual excited is thus the important thing, right? And so the way to get each individual excited, I think, is to build something that is going to make that individual extremely fast and feel like they're fucking flying all the time. So we are going to build that first. And, we're already using Macro as a team. I think that's part of the magic is like, oh, we're thinking of building teams. Like we already have teams, right? We already have teams. They're just channels. And that's the thing. You don't even need to create a workspace. That is so seamless from a PLG perspective, because usually you have like, okay, you got enough people using it. Do you want to get a sales rep in there to upsell them to the team plan? No, not needed, not even needed, right? Everyone can create their own account using their work email. and then they will create a channel together, start using it, and they're off to the races. And I think that is just the seamless adoption arc that is going to actually work really well. And we will probably be happy in a year that we didn't create this sort of like, annoying kind of like team step. Doesn't mean we won't have teams eventually. Just means that like you can get pretty far in your life cycle before you, as a group of users, before you really need that. The other thing is, I think if we added teams too early, we would make a worse product. What I'm interested in is sort of thinking about macro as a social network. So what is our K factor? Meaning, if you look at, you can Google what K factor is, but it's like, how many humans does a single human spread the app to? So one would be each person spreads it to one other person. You can also think of this in terms of viral disease, and it's the same kind of math. K factor above 1 means there's exponential growth, and below 1 means that you need to support it with marketing because it dies out. I think macro could have a pretty high K factor. Let's look at that, right? So Dropbox had a good K factor, people just sharing files. Well, we got sharing files, but also like Hotmail, like sent with Hotmail, we got sent with my iPhone, we got sent with macro in the email. So unless you upgrade, you're getting sent with macro in your signature. And then you can add people to channels, you can assign people tasks, you can share docs, and all of this stuff works without having to create that workspace, and it works cross-company. And you can message people by their email, which means they don't need to be macro users, and they're going to get a great email. And then we'll have a traditional referral system with really cool, Boswellian emails. But there's a lot of different prongs here, a lot of different levers for us to explore, to optimize, not optimize in a shitty A/B testing kind of way, but just like a lot of things to make good and polished and exciting, inviting people to channels by email, inviting people via links when you don't have their email and you want to send it over iMessage or WhatsApp or something. So there's just like so much to do here in terms of how we get new users. And I think if we work on this, our K factor can be actually like quite strong. So, yep, that's a little under your update on my thinking.